Today in history, April 17, Martin Luther faces the diet of worms. In 2025, a creator posts something controversial online. Within 24 hours it's everywhere. Governments panic. Institutions scramble. The world is never quite the same. That happened before. Not last year. Not in the age of the internet. In 1517. And the creator's name was Martin Luther. In early 16th century Europe, information was controlled. Not by an algorithm by the church. The Bible was in Latin, a language only the elite could read. If you had a disagreement with church doctrine, you kept it to yourself. Or you burned. The church wasn't just a religious institution. It was the gatekeeper of knowledge, of salvation, of reality itself. In 1440, a goldsmith named Johannes Gutenberg built something in Mainz, Germany, the printing press. Before it, copying a single book took a monk months of handwork. A Bible cost the equivalent of a small house. The press collapsed those costs overnight. Hundreds of copies, where there used to be one. This was the internet of 1450. Same energy. Same disruption. Same terrified establishment. Martin Luther wasn't a revolutionary by plan. He was a monk. An academic. A theologian at the University of Wittenberg. Anxious, brilliant, deeply religious and increasingly furious. Because the church he served was doing something he found obscene. It was selling forgiveness. Literally. Certificates that promised buyers their sins were cancelled. For a price. A salesman named Johann Tetzel was traveling city to city with a strongbox and a slogan, "As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs." Luther watched his congregation, poor farmers, laborers, hand over money they couldn't afford for a spiritual product he believed was fraudulent. He was a priest watching a scam operate inside his own church.
Luther realized that Latin was a cage. It kept his ideas locked inside the institution he was critiquing. So he translated everything into German, the language of real people. The butcher. The farmer. The merchant's wife. Then he sent it to the press. Within 2 weeks, copies were circulating across Germany. Within 2 months, they had spread through all of Europe. One man. 1/3 of all books sold in Germany over the next 7 years. If you told a modern creator those numbers, they'd think you were lying. But Luther didn't just write one thing. He understood different audiences needed different formats. For scholars, dense theological treatises. For the average German, short punchy pamphlets. For the illiterate, illustrated woodcuts. Images that told the story without a single word. He even wrote hymns. Singable doctrine. Audio content distributed through churches and taverns. Long form, short form, visual, audio. Luther was cross-platform before platforms existed. The church's response was to deplatform him. Pope Leo X issued a papal bull condemning 41 of Luther's ideas and ordering him to recant. Luther's response? He burned the letter publicly. Then wrote about it. In 1521, he was summoned before the Holy Roman Emperor himself and ordered to take it all back. Luther stood there and said, "Here I stand. I can do no other." He was excommunicated. Declared an outlaw. His books were ordered burned. And it didn't matter. Because the copies were already out. Here's how it actually spread. Germany had a thriving merchant trade network. The same routes that moved goods moved pamphlets. Printers were entrepreneurs, they printed what sold. Luther's pamphlets sold, so they printed more. Not out of ideology, out of profit. The algorithm doesn't care about your values. It rewards what gets engagement. And then there were the early adopters, clergy, students, merchants who felt Luther was saying what they'd always believed but never had words for. It rewards what gets engagement. And then there were the early adopters, clergy, students, merchants who felt Luther was saying what they'd always believed but never had words for. That's community building. 500 years before subscriber counts. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Media revolutions don't just spread good ideas faster. They spread all ideas faster. The press that gave Luther his platform also gave platforms to radicals who took things further than he wanted. To agitators. To propagandists. It eventually helped ignite decades of religious wars across Europe. The Reformation didn't lead to a clean new world. It led to chaos before it led to something better. Does that remind you of anything? Social media gave creators the power to bypass legacy media. It gave marginalized voices platforms they'd never had. And it also gave platforms to misinformation, division, and radicalization. The printing press and the internet are the same story, told twice. By the time Luther died in 1546, he had personally published over 400 works. He translated the entire Bible into German and in doing so, essentially standardized the German language itself. A nation found its linguistic identity through his content. The Reformation he sparked contributed to individualism, the scientific revolution, freedom of the press, and democracy. All because one angry monk with great media instincts figured out how to use a new technology to go around the people who controlled the old one. The lesson isn't, use social media. It's not, go viral. The lesson is about leverage. Every generation has a new technology that scrambles old power structures. Every generation has gatekeepers who try to control it. And every generation produces a few people who understand the new tools natively and use them to say something the world wasn't supposed to hear. Luther wasn't the smartest theologian of his era. But he understood the press. He understood format, audience, reach. He understood that an idea locked in Latin in a monastery was not an idea, it was a secret. And he chose to make it loud. The question isn't whether the next media revolution is coming. It already is. The question is, will you be the gatekeeper trying to hold the door shut? Or will you be the one with the hammer?